Hi, I'm Sherilyn from Evoca. In this video I will show you how to correctly export your character from 3ds Max ready to import into the UDK. Now the first thing we want to do is we want to create a folder structure for the UDK. Now this is important because when you bake your level to be exported or given to someone else to play or test out, if you don't have the folder structure correctly, when you bake it, you could have things that go missing. You could have textures missing, materials missing, because it can't find where on the system you've put it. So we must make sure that the folder structure is correct. So all we're going to do is going to create a simple folder structure so we can save our information to and easily get to when we go to import it from the UDK. So what I need you to do is, if you can go into Windows Explorer and go to the drive that you installed your UDK on. Now I'm using May 2014. So if you've got May 2014, it'll show up with UDK 2014-05. You could also be using a different version, like a February version of 2014, August version, or so forth. So go to the location you installed it, UDK, the month, go into UDK game, content. Now this is where everything is stored. Now what we're going to do is create a folder especially for this. So to create a folder, very simple. Most of you may already know how to do this, and that's great. To do that, all you do anywhere on the white space is right click. It'll bring up a pop-up box, go into new and left click on folder. Now what we are going to do is we're going to call this folder the unit name. So we'll call it ICAGAM526A. Okay. Now one thing you've got to know with the UDK is never do spaces. If you want to, you can put underscores, but never do spaces. It does not like it. So from here, we're going to create two more folders. So if you double click on the folder you created, and again, if you right click anywhere on the white space and go to new folder, and we'll call this textures. And what's going to go into here are the textures that we save out of Photoshop later on. And the other folder is going to be called Mesh. So when we export Selena out of 3ds Max, we have a location to put her into. So call this folder Mesh. So the next thing we'll do is we'll open up the character in Max. I've already got her open. If you don't, go ahead and open her up. And what we're going to do here is a bit of a cleanup. Now, we don't need the geos that we created while we were generating the character. All we need is basically Selena, just this one mesh. So what we're going to do is we're going to clean up some layers here. And the first thing we want to do is remove all these extra geos. So if you select all these geos, now the easiest way is if you select the top one, come to the bottom, hold down Shift and click. You'll see this selects all. But then we don't want Selena to disappear. So if you hold down the Control key and click on Selena, that will deselect it. What we now want to do is hit the Delete key on the keyboard, and all we're left with is Selena. So now we need to create or fix up the layers. So if you come into the Manage Layer, you'll notice that the white box layer is still here that we created. We don't want that. If this is selected with the blue folders here, select the default, because we want to deselect that, and then come up to your white box layer, right click and delete. And all we're left with now is the Selena game character layer, and of course the default one. So this one here is our Selena. Okay, if we close that, what we now need to do is create a selection set. So to do that, if you click on this ABC, first of all, select Selena, click on this ABC, which is an edit name selection sets. This will allow us to add a selection set. So click on that. And then what we want to do is we want to create a new set with Selena selected, which you can see we've already got it selected here. Click on this and give it a name. I'm just going to call it Selena and enter. And if we click on this plus, we can see that her geometry is in here. Okay, we can close this. Now, once we've done that, what we need to do is something that's very important for the UDK. At the moment, we've only got one UV set, which is what was created for the head and for the body. So effectively, 2, but it's actually 1. And this is for the diffuse, the normal, spec, AO, anything else that you want to have show up in the engine. Now, the reason UDK wants 2 UV sets is one is for the diffuse section, the other is for the light maps. Now, if you do not have 2 UV sets, and when you light your level, and you see some models that looks like it's got some odd, strange things happening with the lighting, 9 times out of 10, it's possibly because you don't have a second light map, or a second UV map, I should say. So it's very important to create 2 UV maps, one for lighting and one for the diffuse. Very easy to do. So what we do is we have Selena. We come into our modify and we add a UV set. So click on the drop down arrow and type in UV to go to UVWs and hit unwrap UVW. Okay. So with the UVW selected, if you scroll down here, you see we've got channel. At the moment, we've only got 1 map channel. We want 2. As I said, 1 for the diffuse and 1 for the all-important light maps. Now, you can either highlight here, type in 2, or you can use the arrow up to go to the second channel. So type in 2 or use the up arrow and enter. Now, when you do, it'll ask you, or it'll give you a warning, channel change warning. Now, we don't want to move the sets, the current UV sets, over to the new one. So we want to abandon it for now. We will copy it soon. So hit the abandon key. What that's done is that's now created 2 UV maps. So what we now need to do is we want to copy the UV maps from the first channel to the second one. So we've got something to work with. So to do that, if you go to Tools and Channel Info down the bottom here, or the second last one, it'll bring up a channel info box. Now we've noticed we've got 2 maps here. These are the UV channels here, map 1 and map 2. So to do that, we select this channel here, right click and copy, come to the second map here, hover over the none, right click and paste. Now it will ask you for a name. I'm just going to call it LMUV, which stands for Light Map UVs, and click OK. Okay. What we need to do now is close the map channel info box, and we now need to collapse this and then go back into UV maps so we can flatten them out. So once you've done that, come over here and right click, and I'll try and get that in the viewport, and select collapse all and say yes. Then now we need to go into the UV maps again. So from the modify list, click on the drop down arrow and type in UV to go into UVW and select unwrap UVW. Okay, down here, map channel. Now we want to change that to 2. So type in 2 or use the up key. And it'll ask you channel change warning. Now, again, I want to abandon because we don't want to modify the UVs that we've already put in place. So hit abandon. Now, if we come into Open UV Editor, the UVs will be taken from channel 1. So come into Open UV Editor, and if you have a look, the UVs have been copied from channel 1, which is exactly what we want. Now what we want to do is, for the light maps to work, we cannot have any overlapping, and because we've got 2 different channels, we've got a head and a body diffuse. Of course, some of it looks like it's going to overlap, but of course we've got 2 different materials, so that doesn't matter. But for light maps, yes it does. So we need to flatten this out so we do not have any overlapping whatsoever. So if you can come up to Tools, Pack UVs. Now the padding, we don't want it to be too large, too small. So I'm going to set this to 0.00, set it to 0.005 to start with. Let's see what we get. We want to rotate and fill holes. That will pack it nice and neatly. So once you've chosen that, click OK, and we'll give it a second. Yeah, that's not too bad. That should be all right for doing it for a light map. If you're not happy with it, you can go back up to Tools, Pack, and try it again until you get something that you like. But for this case, we'll leave it at that. It's not too bad. Okay, once that's done, I'll close the UV editor. We need to collapse. So collapse all. So right click, collapse all. and say yes. So now our model has 2 UV maps. So she's now ready to be exported. So to export her, make sure you have got the geometry selected, which we do. And we need to come to this little max button here with the drop-down arrow. So click on the drop-down arrow, choose export, and export selected. Now we need to make sure that it's an FBX. That is the format that UDK takes when importing models, whether it's a static mesh, an animatic mesh, anything like that. It needs to be FBX. So you need to now go to the location where we created the folder for your mesh. So all you do is where it's got save in, go to the location. In my case, it's on the D drive. Go into the UDK, go into the month, go into UDK game, content, and you remember we called it the name of the unit, so ICAGAM526A, and we've got mesh. So double click on this, and we'll just call it Selena, and hit save. Now, what we need to do is we need to take note of the FBX export options. Now, because I've done exporting before, it's actually saved what should be done. So once you do it once, you shouldn't need to necessarily do it again unless you need to make the changes for other things you might need to save FBXs out for. So we want the smoothing groups to be ticked, tangents and binormals. So what will happen is the tangents and the binormals of the mesh that you created, the polygons, are correct for the engine. We want to make sure triangulate is on in case it doesn't triangulate it, and preserve edge orientation. So once all these are ticked, click on OK, and she has been exported. She is now ready to be put into the engine. So what you've learnt in this lesson is how to clean up your model, how to create 2 UV maps, one for your normal diffuse and one for the light maps, how to create a basic file structure for the UDK, and how to export her as an FBX correctly.